As Kevin Cooney writes over at the Bucks County Courier-Times, the 2017 Phillies, they look like a team that was taking a step in the right direction. We're at the midway point, Kevin, and they are an unmitigated mess, as you tweeted out. How did we get here? Why is this team taking, it seems, steps backwards instead of forwards?
I think, guys, and how you doing? By the way, it's nice to be the leadoff act for Bob Cooney. It's just the way. We go everywhere in that way. Bob covers the better team in town now. So I would say the reason that they've taken the step backwards is it's just lack of development. I mean, Odubel Herrera, Maikel Franco, Vince Velasquez, Jared Eichhoff. I mean, go on and on and on down the roster. I mean, it's easier to kind of pick out who has been or it's easier to pick out who hasn't really improved than it is who has improved at this point. Maybe Aaron Nola, maybe Aaron Altair. That's about it at this point when you look at this roster.
Is that more that they overvalued some of the guys that they had, or as you said, is that a shot at the development of the players? I mean, did they look at Herrera and think he was a better player than maybe he is? Did they look at Eichhoff and say, man, this guy is a much better guy than we thought we were getting, and maybe overvalue him because they wanted to feel like, hey, we got a better player than we really thought we were getting?
Mike, on the Herrera point, they will still tell you that he's a better player than what you're seeing.
I heard Mackinnon say that yesterday, and I'm like, I don't know what you guys are seeing, man.
Well, and Matt Klentak, when he talked to us on Saturday, because a bunch of us are doing our our midseason review stories and everything, he points out that that Herrera had an 880 OPS in June, and that's fine. He also went 53 plate appearances without an extra base hit. Between June 22nd and yesterday's home run. I mean, so there's that, and there's the mental breakdowns that he's had on the bases, a couple, goofball kind of plays, in the outfield where, look, he's been very good in the outfield at times, but, even yesterday, it seems like that nonchalant little exchange is something that really, is now, that's the latest thing. I mean, so, to me, those type of things, they are valuing like Odubel Herrera to be part of their future. And in my mind, I think they're overvaluing the numbers. I mean, the numbers can lie. And, to be a great player, you have to be consistent. He's just not consistent. And that's where I think that they're overvaluing somebody like Herrera. If you want to mention Eichhoff, I think Eichhoff just got into a mechanical issue. Do I think maybe he's a little overvalued? Yeah, but I think that he also does have some stuff to be a major league pitcher. So, I think the problem is the talent's not there, and I think that the mindset has to change that these guys are just going to turn it around at some point because some of them are not.
Kevin, you said they look at Herrera as part of their future, but if they could move Odubel Herrera, would they? Does he have any value?
I think they would like to think that they would move anybody, but, I'll be honest, Pete. One, I don't know if there's going to be a market for him. Two, I think that Matt Klentak, at least right now, has put so much out there on Herrera. I mean, he's the one guy with a contract beyond this year. To me, this makes me think that they believe he's going to turn all this around and develop into a great player. And again, I don't necessarily see it. They do. I would doubt that anything would happen this year with him. Maybe in the off season they would reconsider, but I don't see anything by the end of this month that's going to be a change for Odubel Herrera.
Mike and I were talking, and I mentioned Aaron Nola in Saturday's night's game. He looked pretty good, but what about
he's looked pretty good a couple starts. Yeah, he's one guy that has been encouraging.
Looks like he's
back. 7 starts have been really good for him since he came back from the disabled list.
What about the rest of the young pitching, though, Kevin, that they had entering this season? What would you say the state of the situation is with all the young arms. How are the young arms looking right now?
Well, Pete, if you think about it, 4 of their 5 starters, okay? I mean, take Nola out of the equation, okay? Velasquez right now has been injured. Eichhoff just coming back from an injury, wins his first game yesterday. Okay, Buchholz isn't around. And Hellickson has been inconsistent, and you would probably trade him now for pennies on the dollar just to get him out of here. I mean, the bright spots of their rotation, in my mind, have been Nola, certainly. Ben Lively has been respectable in his outings. I think when you look at, it's been the guy Nick Pivetta coming up, and Pavetta's actually looked like he has some major league stuff too. I mean, these are 2 guys that you would not have counted on necessarily to be in your rotation. And I think now at the midway point, they're guys that you're thinking, okay, bottom back end of the rotation guys, and maybe Aaron Nola's a 2 or a 3 as you develop. And then you kind of figure out what Eichhoff and Velasquez are going to be as you move forward here. I think Velasquez eventually ends up in the bullpen. But, yeah, I mean, that's where their rotation is at this point. And what has to scare them, though, is their best starting pitchers in the minor leagues are so far away. You know, the Sixto Sanchez is down at Lakewood, and some of their other power arms, the lower levels, that you're going to have to. They don't want to go spend on starting pitching in free agency. It's kind of the way Andy McPhail and Clentak have approached, building the stable of arms here and not having to go spend a lot of money because starting pitching is risky. But I think at some point they may, when they get closer to contention, they're going to have to do that.
Yeah, Pete asked about the young arms, and that was kind of like, I guess one of the positive feelings coming in was, hey, if somebody got hurt, there were some young arms that they've acquired in the past that you could bring up. You weren't bringing up the Jerome Williams and that, style or that level of pitcher. But I guess, Kevin, they've got to be a little disappointed on guys like Jake Thompson, where he's at, and where some of the younger guys are. And when they've been given a chance to been called up, they haven't made enough impressions to say, we've got to keep this guy around. They've been yo-yoing a lot of these guys back and forth.
Yeah, if you're looking at it right now, Jake Thompson, in my mind, might be looking at it as a bullpen piece down the road. He hasn't been consistent enough to make them blink about bringing him up here, or, to be honest, to warrant a promotion as a starting pitcher at this point. And we're now midway through the season. I mean, everybody looks at Lehigh Valley and they look at that record and you go, wow, look at all they must have, prospect. Well, Mark Capel hasn't been great. Eshelman obviously has been pretty good. I would imagine he would be the next guy up if they need a starting pitcher. But there's a lot of, there's a lot of, guys there who, and talking to scouts that I talk to about stuff like this, they look at some of the Phillies prospects and they point out flaws, and they see lots of flaws that they think, you could get away with at AAA, but when you make that leap to the next level, they're going to get exposed. Go back to the position players. Jorge Alfaro, one, hasn't hit in about 2.5 months. And 2, they point out his defensive flaws, that his hands are always busy. They never seem set. That's part of the reason why he has trouble, with pass balls and everything, and why guys have trouble, maybe, hitting a target with him. It's that type of stuff that, at the minor leagues, you look at the win-loss record, you must think, everything's hunky-dory. But right now, I think that's something that, at least beneath the surface, has to concern some people up here.
Kevin Cooney's with us, covers the Phillies at the midway point here, and, of course, the Phillies
29-58 at the midway point. Important to note
Same
that.
record as 2015, by the way. Well, after 97 games.
Wow, Kevin Cooney
or
from
87 games
from the Bucks County Courier Times. You mentioned Velasquez. A lot of people have, mentioned he should be maybe in the back end of a bullpen, maybe a closer. Are they and he starting to come to that realization too? Because they have kind of fought that off. But is it starting to become more and more clear that maybe that's the direction they see for him too now?
I think that he would like. I think he would like it. Apologize for the dogs. I think he would like.
I think that's a stamp of approval from the dog that he believes that Velasquez also should be in the bed.
Yeah, Finley approves. I think when you look at it, I think Velasquez and the Phillies would like to see how it goes the second half of the year, and obviously, I think you're going to see a movement of Jeremy Hellickson here in the next few weeks. After that, I would imagine that's where this discussion is going to go in the offseason. I think that, Vince Velasquez cannot, if he's going to be a 5-inning pitcher, I understand the rationale of you want to see him make 30 starts a year, and you want to see him go 180 innings as opposed to 65 or 70 or whatever a closer goes, okay? But if he's only going to go give you 5 innings, and give you 150 innings as a start, and the toll that it takes on the rest of your bullpen, I think you have to move them because, quite honestly, they're going to have to rebuild this bullpen again in the offseason. Neshek's going to go. Benoit's going to go. I don't know if you could count on Hector Neris to be a closer. He may get the first shot at it next year out of Clearwater. But they're going to have to do some rebuilding of the bullpen, and Velasquez's stuff, at least in the interim, might be the best thing that they can put back there. It might be better than any trade or free agent they pick up.
Talking Phillies baseball with Kevin Cooney. And, Kevin, what's the prognosis and plan, if you will, for Maikel Franco? Is that maybe the most important decision for Matt Klentak moving forward with the current roster? If somebody came to them and talked to them, would they think about moving them? Sure. But I think that's with everybody on this roster. I don't think there's a market, or if there is a market, it's going to be a low market. And I don't think the Phillies are willing at 24 to just give up on a guy like that. But that being said, look, everybody's talked about the free agent class of 18, when you have Machado there. Even if you don't go for Machado, and I wrote about this on Sunday too, and I think this actually fits more into what the Phillies window could be if contention is Nolan Arenado out of Colorado. If the Rockies are not able to re-sign him, do you choose him as the guy that you would want? There's a lot of belief that Arenado is certainly a better, more polished player, and it's only about a year age difference between him and Machado at this point. Maikel Franco still has a shot to change the conversation, and it's a matter of right now him finding a way to be consistent. And he works hard. Everybody who is around this team sees him working the cage, working with Matt Stairs and everything. And the stuff when he's in batting practice is what Matt Stairs wants. But then when it gets to it's the old muscle memory thing. When you get inside to, it's Pete Mackanin compares it to swinging a golf club. You could go on the range and, you adjust your grip, bend your knees more or something, and you're hitting the ball well, and then you take it onto the course, and it just doesn't happen. You revert back to your old habits. That's exactly kind of what has happened with Franco here. And unless he could get some of these changes to completely stick, and look, Klentak has talked about exit velocity and strikeout ratios and walk ratios, and in a way he's right, but it has to be more consistent, and that's where Franco really has suffered right now.
I'm talking with Kevin Cooney for the Bucks County Courier Times, covers the Phillies, who are at the midway point. And, Kevin, you mentioned the AAA team. Maybe the pitching doesn't have a lot of guys, but they do have some offensive guys that have some interest. One of them, Hoskins, who played the other night. You see Kingery up, who's played well. Nick Williams is up here now. Are there guys that are down there that you or the Phillies would like to see sometime in the second half? And obviously, some of them come with some log jams, which I guess they're going to have to address sooner than later.
Yeah, if you think about Rhys Hoskins is clearly has been the main guy that everybody's talked about it. I think if there wasn't Tommy Joseph up here, Rhys Hoskins probably would be up here right now, which leads to the question of, can you move Tommy Joseph? And you're not going to look, for none of the pieces that the Phillies are going to try to move in this deadline, they're not going to get a blockbuster package. You know, Pat Neshek, they get you 2 single-A or double-A relievers. You know, Hellickson may get you the same if you eat some of the salary to a team like Milwaukee or Minnesota, you know, who's kind of in a position to maybe go for it now and needs another starter. You know, could Joseph be appealing to the Yankees? Yeah, he could. I think the Yankees would prefer a left-handed hitter, maybe a Yonder Alonso. Fits New York's situation better at first base, given kind of how big a mess that's become. But yeah, I mean, I think Hoskins is the guy that, if you're asking me who will be the first guy up after the trade deadline among the position players, I think it'll be it'll be Hoskins, provided that it can move Tommy Joseph, which I think they will try to do before the 31st.
Kevin Cooney with us. Kevin, you brought up Jorge Alfaro a little bit ago, but I want to ask you about Cameron Rupp. He did play in yesterday's game. He's hitting .333, 6 for 18, home run and 4 walks in his last 6 games. But I thought Mike and I had seen reports, or there was chatter out there that maybe there was a bit of a disconnect between him and some of the guys in the coaching staff, and that they were throwing Knapp out there more often. Where's Cameron Rupp's status right now on this baseball team?
Well, you know, it's not a strict, you know, Andrew Knapp is the starter moment right now, but he is getting a lot more at-bats in recent weeks. I think part of it is they feel like he's a better defensive catcher, which is what, look, Bob McClure made the comments on the Phillies pregame show back in May down in Washington about pitch selection and framing and all that type of stuff from the catchers. And you know, the catchers have been getting their own – the catchers have been embattled because of their defensive prowess more than even their offense. And Rupp was in a pretty big slump before this last 6 games. And that made it easy for Pete to give Knapp a little more of a look. But as far as the future of catcher of this organization, or at least that's been the plan, there's flaws there with their defense and with their game calling that I think everybody admits has to get worked on. I think one of the bigger mistakes they made, Pete, was this offseason, I thought it was important for them to get a veteran catcher in here, kind of an A.J. Ellis type, or you know, just to be able to nurture a young pitching staff along. And I think that's one of the things that they haven't been able to do. That there's been the lack of veterans and the lack of a catcher who's going to go out there and just kind of settle things down when things are going a little rough, and knowing maybe hitters' tendencies a little more. I think that's something that has hurt them, and Rupp and Knapp both right now have not had that.
Phillies at the break, looking at some questions for the second half. So what's the conundrum in the middle of the infield there? Because obviously Crawford, he's going to be knocking on the door, even though his numbers aren't suggesting that we got to bring him up. He has hit better recently. But they got 2 guys that have been – that's the problem with the Phillies. They got 2 guys that are good, not great. They're just nice players. I mean, they're average players. They're not great. But what's going to happen in the middle of that infield, and when are we going to see a shakeup there?
Well, let's start with second base. Scott Kingery, unless they decide they're going to shift in the third and, you know, and move Maikel Franco, Scott Kingery is going to be the second baseman here. It's a question of, you know, will it be in Clearwater next year, or will it be in mid-May or something? Or if they get a trade for Hernandez maybe as soon as this year, but I would kind of doubt that. I think, you know, there is the 40-man thing of not having to put them on and expose them to the, you know, and they can protect another player from the Rule 5 draft and all that. There's a lot of little logistical things. Shortstop's interesting because, you know, there's been so much hype about J.P. Crawford, and, you know, he has in the last 2 weeks really started to hit well. He was always getting on base. He was taking a lot of walks and everything. His on-base numbers have always been really good. But, you know, in talking to scouts, and I couple weeks ago for a story I did on Crawford. They point out that there's that the defensive lapses. That if you divide things up, Freddie Galvis has more power. Freddie Galvis has a better defender. Yeah, he doesn't give you the on-base percentage, but also Freddie has become a leader. I mean, Galvis has been one of those guys, because he's been here the longest, perhaps it's the reason why, that has taken all this losing very personally, and spoke up about it, and become a kind of a focal point in that clubhouse. And that's something that they need. They've needed somebody who is going to kind of take everybody by the ear and try to lead them a little bit here. And in the last 10 days, Galvis, at least by his play, is it's going to. I'm not sure Derek Jeter in his prime could lead this team anywhere, close to 500. But at least what Freddie Galvis has done is shown him by example. Hey, this is the way you're supposed to play. It is a conundrum, because eventually at some point you're going to have to make the move to get Crawford up here, or you're going to have to make the move to move Crawford and keep some value. But I don't know how you can let Galvis go at this point. That's just my opinion.
Talking with Kevin Cooney. Freddie Galvis, 31 extra base hits this season, and home runs number 9 and 10 in yesterday's game. Also with a home run yesterday, Kevin, Nick Williams. Of course, we were joking. It went over the 334 sign. We said it was 334 and a half feet because it barely made it over that wall and left, but they all count. He touched all 4 bags. Has Nick Williams done enough? I know it's in a limited time, but do you think they're happy with what they've seen from Nick Williams in 10 games?
I think they are, because every ball he seems to hit has a pretty good zip on it, even if it's an out. It's solid contact. Actually, in his first 10 days up here, and one of the knocks that has been on him the whole time was that he had a poor command of the strike zone. He seems to have been a little better at that than what was advertised, at least in this first week and a half. Now, could that go away in a hurry? Absolutely, it could, but at this point, I would say Nick Williams is going to get a long look the rest of this year, and probably early next year before they make a final decision whether he's part of the core going forward.
Kevin Cooney, Bucks County Courier Times, the Phillies at the break, and Kevin writes a great piece. Check it out. It's been a mess. We'll see if things turn around in the second half. Kevin, we appreciate the time as always, pal.
No problem. Thanks, Mike.